When people think of the fall of Rome, most imagine barbarians storming the city, legions collapsing, and emperors being poisoned in intrigue-filled palaces. But great empires do not fall only because of external blows. Collapse usually begins from within, and one of the most important reasons for this is money. Rome did not fall only because of invasions or corrupt rulers. It fell because its money lost value. This remains a lesson even today for modern economies that play with money. Let's go back a little. For centuries, the backbone of the Roman economy was a silver coin called the denarius. First minted in 211 BC, it was almost pure silver. Soldiers were paid with it, merchants demanded it in trade, and the public stored their savings in it. In other words, the denarius was not just a means of payment, but the physical representation of trust in Rome. As long as Rome was strong, its money inspired confidence. But running an empire was expensive. Army salaries, building roads, funding wars. Expenses grew tremendously. By the 2nd century AD, Rome was fighting on both eastern and western borders, while also suppressing internal revolts. Even though taxes increased, they could not keep up with expenses. So emperors turned to a well-known method. They reduced the silver content of the currency. Increasing taxes would anger the people, so the silver content of the money was lowered instead. The numbers tell the story clearly. Under Emperor Augustus, the denarius was 95% silver. Under Caracalla, this dropped to 50%. By the reign of Gallienus, it fell below 5%. What was once a solid silver coin had become a thinly coated bronze coin, and people noticed. The result? Inflation. Because the money no longer had real value, a measure of wheat that once cost 1 denarius suddenly cost dozens. This was not theoretical. It destroyed people's lives. Soldiers demanded higher wages due to rising prices, and merchants began rejecting weaker coins, demanding gold or even direct barter. The foundational trust in the currency was gone, and as public confidence vanished, emperors printed even more low-quality coins to fix the situation, creating the same vicious circle seen in many inflation crises. This crisis peaked during the crisis of the 3rd century. From 235 to 284 AD, Rome suffered nearly 50 years of invasions, plagues, civil wars, and economic collapse. Emperors came and went, some ruling for only months. At the root of this political chaos was a failing financial system. The state tried to collect taxes with worthless money. Farmers abandoned their lands, saying, "We can't pay taxes under these conditions." Trade networks collapsed. The government tried harsh measures like wage controls and forced labor, but nothing worked. Emperor Diocletian tried to repair the situation. In 301 AD, he issued the Edict on Maximum Prices, setting fixed state prices for thousands of goods from basic food to labor wages. Violating these prices could result in death. But if the money itself was worthless, what difference could price controls make? They didn't. The black market boomed, official trade stopped. People learned again. Laws cannot make a currency valuable. Eventually, Rome abandoned the denarius. In 312 AD, Emperor Constantine introduced the solidus, a pure gold coin. This coin provided stability for centuries in the Eastern Roman Empire. But for the Western Empire, it was too late. The collapse of money had already broken the economic backbone. The army could no longer be funded, trade ceased, and the public lost trust in the government. Rome's fall was not a single event, but a long process, and the collapse of its currency was one of the harshest links in that chain. What does this mean for us? This: when money collapses, empires collapse. The Romans thought, "We changed the inside of the coin, but kept the appearance the same. No one will notice." Today, some governments do the same by printing more money, manipulating interest rates, and expanding debt. But the outcome is unchanged. The people always pay the price. Wealth disappears, trust fades. Rome taught this lesson painfully. And if we ignore it, we will make the same mistake. Nearly every major inflation crisis of the past 2,000 years shows the same pattern. Governments debase the currency, the wealthy shift into real assets, and ordinary people watch their savings evaporate. Rome was just one of the first major examples. In the 20th century, the setting changed, but the story stayed the same. After World War I, Germany printed money to pay the heavy reparations of the Treaty of Versailles, just as Rome had done. By 1923, inflation was out of control. Bread that cost 1 mark before the war cost 200 billion marks by autumn. People carried their wages in wheelbarrows. Lifelong savings vanished in a night. Debtors were saved. Those with factories, land, or gold grew richer. Money lost meaning. Economic despair fueled radical politics and laid the groundwork for Hitler. In the 2000s, Zimbabwe followed the same path. Facing massive debt and economic collapse, the government printed money. By 2008, inflation reached unimaginable levels, 89.7 sextillion% per year. Prices doubled almost daily. The government finally abandoned its own currency. People began using US dollars and South African rand. Again, the same story. The state believed it could fool reality, but the people paid. And it's not just extreme cases. Even in developed economies, Rome's story continues. In 1971, U.S. President Nixon removed the dollar from the gold standard. From then on, the dollar became fiat money, its value based solely on trust in the government. This made it easier, just like in Rome, to expand the money supply and debt. A 1971 dollar today has the purchasing power of about $6. The bill looks the same, but its value has quietly eroded. Governments called it growth. Wages rose, but prices rose faster. Stock markets soared, but most people did not benefit. Like Roman emperors, modern governments said everything is fine, while quietly extracting value from the currency. The danger today is this. Now it's not just one country. Rome's collapse was an imperial problem. Weimar and Zimbabwe were national problems. But today the world runs on enormous debt and central banks that print unlimited money. This means that if a crisis comes, the impact will be global. And history shows that the ones who suffer most will not be the elites, but wage earners, retirees, and savers. So, what should individuals learn? First, inflation is usually not an accident. It is policy, a silent tax. Second, real wealth is not numbers on paper or screens. It is assets that hold value even if money loses value. Land, businesses, skills, real production. Third, no economic system is permanent. If someone told a Roman citizen in the 1st century, this money will be worthless one day, they would have laughed. Germans in 1913 could not imagine carrying cash in wheelbarrows. Zimbabweans did not think their stable youth would end in chaos. But all experienced the same story. Rome's monetary crisis reminds us. Financial systems crumble slowly, then collapse suddenly. When money loses value, society fractures. Trade stops, contracts break, armies fall apart, states lose trust. The barbarians at the gates only deliver the final blow. The real collapse starts in the treasury. Final word. History does not repeat exactly, but it does crush those who fail to learn from it. Rome's monetary crisis was not just the fault of bad emperors. It was the first major example of how fragile society becomes when those in power abuse money, and that fragility is still with us. If history has given you a new perspective, subscribe, because the answers are in history, if we know where to look.